The published claim right now, though, is that he has reversed his aging by between 5 to 7 years. So he's 5 to 7 years younger than his biological age. And again, that thing of celebrating his birthday once every 2 years, it's been published all over the place. That's a great achievement.
Bryan Johnson is definitely at the forefront just because he is pushing the envelope, pushing the boundaries. He's doing some amazing, incredible things. Some people, it's highly controversial, of course, and a lot of people are against what he's doing. A lot of medical professionals are against what he's doing, but then there's a huge amount of people who are proponents, and they're watching very closely because he's essentially his own guinea pig. This should be an option. However, not everyone should and not everyone wants to live forever. For example, if you're a violent criminal, should you have access to something that is going to, you were sentenced to 1 life term, and now you have the ability to live beyond that life term. Should that violent criminal have access to this type of technology? I think 2030 is a little aggressive, solely based on the fact that it's going to have to cross many hurdles from a regulatory restriction standpoint, human trials, to actually get it to commercial viability. So my personal projection is we will achieve it, and it will be commercially available to us as humans by 2040.
This is the first biography I've read that seems to focus more on the author himself. Have you read this, Steven? Hello and welcome back. Today we will be discussing the fascinating possibility of achieving immortality via the use of the cutting-edge technologies we have today. The likes of artificial intelligence, gene editing technologies, quantum computing, you name them. We so happen to have Steven Zeller here with us in the studio today to weigh in on this topic we have today. Steven is a successful serial international entrepreneur, one who so happens to be extremely passionate about advancing human civilization with the use of technological innovations. And he is just the right person we need to have on today's call. Hello, Steven. How's it going, buddy?
It's going fantastic. How are you, Newton? Thanks so much for having me on.
It's going well. It's a pleasure having you on today's episode. Steven,
pleasure's mine.
For those watching this who might not know very much about you, could you tell us who Steven Zeller is and what business or businesses is he currently involved in?
Sure. So I am a futurist and a tech investor primarily. That is what I focus on the vast majority of my time. Obviously, I did not start in tech. Tech is a passion of mine. I actually didn't initially start out that way. I started my entrepreneurial journey very young and as a teenager, had multiple startups, some failures, some success. It's been a very long, interesting, and fun road. And now I'm lucky to be fortunate enough to marry my passions where I can actually take my entrepreneurial experience and marry that with my passion for advancing human civilization into a prosperous future, which I believe is incredible. And what we're going to see in the next 10 years is something we're going to dive into in this discussion.
I completely agree. And just for the viewers, anyone watching this, and you might not have any service you currently provide, but let's say someone watching this, what are the needs they would have to come to you, right? What services do you have any business in particular that runs a particular service right now that could help someone watching this?
Of course, it's not necessarily relevant to the topic at hand. However, yes, I do have a couple businesses that I run. One is an international consulting firm that I run out of the UAE. And then that one is primarily geared towards established businesses already. especially if they're looking to implement agentic AI or AI applications into their business to optimize and scale. That is where I can come in, optimize their existing business structure, and then help them scale, leveraging the advancements that we have access to literally just within the last year. It's actually impressive, but that is one business that I do run. I do not spend an exorbitant amount of time on it, but I do have incredible staff that is very knowledgeable. I have systems and processes in place that are able to achieve tremendous results for established businesses looking to scale using agentic AI.
Longevity and immortality. Steven, the topic for today. Steven, why would you even care about this topic? The reason I ask is, surprisingly, I found out that there's quite a large faction of the tech community and maybe the society in general that could care less how long they live on planet Earth, right? 100 years, less than that, some people would say it's completely sufficient for them to achieve all their goals, dreams. And however, there's some people who are just interested in this topic, interested in expanding the lifespan that humans can actually live continuously. Why does this topic in particular interest you, if it does?
Absolutely. Good question. And that's a question that a lot of people come to me with is, not to bring up Jurassic Park, but there's a fun little quote that they're saying, we spent so much time working on how to do this, we never really thought about if we should, whether or not we should. So a lot of people bring this up as a potential pessimistic viewpoint to, okay, should humans live forever? And then obviously that opens up a huge can of worms that we can go down a rabbit hole on the ethics of it. What does it look like from a disparity perspective, an economic perspective, resource scarcity perspective. So there's a lot of different rabbit holes we could go down. Now, one thing to your point, this should be an option, right? So there's two things that I'm going to bring to this discussion. One is having the option. If you don't want to, let's say theoretically that we have the ability to give you a injection or genetically engineer proteins that are capable to reset your biological clock. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a forced, right, longevity. It is simply an option. So for those wanting to live forever, or let's say just extend their life cycle by double or 50%, they could live a healthy lifestyle for 150 years instead by taking X medication or X injections. Having that as an option would be incredible. Those who don't want to opt for it, they say, you know what, there's something beautiful about knowing my life is finite. Who am I to come and say that, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me, which it doesn't, if I'm being completely honest. However, not everyone should, and not everyone wants to live forever. For example, if you're a violent criminal, should you have access to something that is going to, okay, you were sentenced to one life term, and now you have the ability to live beyond that life term. Should that violent criminal have access to this type of technology? So obviously I don't want to get caught up in that, but that I just use it as a example of it's a good point. Those who don't want to live forever and think it's beautiful to live a finite existence and they're good with that, that's perfectly acceptable. But for those that do, having the technological capability to extend your life cycle, I believe, is an incredible advancement that should be available and will be available in the near future. Now, one other thing I'm going to focus on is not all longevity research focuses on extending your life cycle. It focuses on health span, not lifespan. Meaning, what if you were okay with living your 80 to 100 years, right? You don't want to deal with extending your life, but the inevitable degrading that your biological systems will go through as you age. So the aging process, what if you could extend your health span, meaning when you're 80 years old, you're not decrepit, you're not breaking your hip every time you bump into a wall, right? What if you could actually live a healthy, younger, more vibrant 80 to 100 years and then call it quits? So there's two sides to the coin, I guess. One is focusing from a longevity health cycle. Others are life cycle.
You made a very good point there, having the ability to choose, right? If we are at the top of the pyramid on planet Earth, we should be able to choose whether we want to stay on the planet for longer and what quality of life we would like to have while we are at 120 years old, for example. Steven, What about you in particular? Would you want to live forever? If yes, why?
So forever is one thing that I can't answer right now. Would I like to extend my life cycle beyond the existing limitations of 120, right? Which is from a biological clock time frame, that's about it, right? That's the extent that we are encoded from our DNA will not allow us to currently live past that limitation. Would I like to expand my own timeline? Yes. Now, what that looks like, I can't say. Are we going to be bored? Are we going to get to a point? I believe the answer is no, by the way. For entrepreneurial people like myself, there's always challenges. There's always nuances. There's always something to do, and you're never done. Right. So, for example, let's say theoretically, we're currently developing the technology to expand our footprint beyond Earth's limited, inhibited environment. Right. So, for the first time, we can actually start exploring our own solar system, and hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to have the propulsion or quantum systems capable of taking us outside of our own solar system, which is obviously a big undertaking, but that would be incredible. Imagine being alive for that, being able to witness it, being a part of it. So those are reasons that I believe when I hear somebody make the argument that if you live a 1,000 years, you would just get bored. Life loses its purpose. Life loses its meaning if you can live indefinitely. I would argue that doesn't compute with me. That doesn't make sense because we as a species, we as a human are very curious species, right? We're constantly pushing the envelope, but we're constantly developing, right? So if you were a caveman, right? You develop the wheel. And now we go all the way up to our current circumstances where we have computational capabilities that we would never have dreamed of literally 30, 40 years ago. It's incredible what we've accomplished in such a very short period of time on a cosmic scale, of course. So for me, I don't see longevity being problematic for somebody who actually desires to be a part of what the future inevitably holds.
While you were speaking, you alluded to some very important things I had never considered. Like, could there be some moral or civic concerns to people being able to live indefinitely? You mentioned something about some people, right? Some nefarious actors on planet Earth, that the Earth would be a better place without them, right? We definitely do not want such people hanging around. I don't know if the government could get involved in this. Is this going to be detrimental to planet in general and the finite resources it has to support life? Those are very interesting things that I don't think gets discussed enough when people speak about using modern day technology to allow us to live indefinitely as much as possible. But I'm happy you brought that up. Before we close the curtain on that very topic, do you have some insight on those areas regarding, you mentioned some rabbit holes, morality wise,
I'm happy to go down those rabbit holes. I can do that all day, dude.
What are some things people fail to consider when talking about longevity in general?
Sure. So let's, for a moment, take a contrary position to my own, right? So obviously I'm very pro. I believe that this is a good thing. For example, the ability to, and we have this now, we have the ability to take your skin cells and essentially reprogram them. We have cellular reprogramming technology that has the ability to take a skin cell, turn it back to a pluripotent cell that's non-differentiated, and then it can then become whatever we decide it needs to be. So let's say we wanted to take your own cells, your own DNA, and grow. You needed a liver transplant, you needed a kidney transplant, you needed a heart. The ability to actually grow a heart that's not going to be rejected by your body because it's actually from so it eradicates the need for a organ donor transplant list. The thousands of people that are dying don't necessarily have to in that scenario.
So that's possible. That's possible now, today.
Not just possible, it's happening, or at least we have the technology to do so. Now, obviously, getting FDA clearance and going through human trials and everything, that's going to take time. But do we have the technological capability to do that? Absolutely. We're doing it in mice, which mice are obviously great study because they procreate quite readily, and they are also there's about a 1% difference from a DNA viewpoint between ourselves and mice. So that allows us to get pretty darn close when we're talking about manipulations in proteins and cells and DNA itself. So they make fantastic lab experiments. So yes, we have the technological capability to do that. So it's not sci-fi as much as it's, okay, we have the tech, we're developing the tech, and it's rapidly advancing.
Are you aware of any human at all? Are you aware of any human that has had one of these organs?
Not
grown in the lab?
No.
I'm genuinely curious now.
So from not that's actually been transplanted. So there are a lot. So we have been able to actually grow organoids. Obviously, those are not full-blown organs. So just basically proving the concept, proving that it works. We can actually take a petri dish and actually grow a 10,000 neuron brain. Right now, obviously, that's a far cry from an actual human brain with 86 to 100 billion neurons. Right, so when you look at that's what's actually in a human brain. Now we are able to grow this little organoid from scratch. Essentially, it's incredible, but obviously, that's not growing a full human brain. And then, what does it look like to implant that? So no, from a human trial perspective, we're not there yet. We have the ability to do it, and we are still a little ways off from actually getting to the point where we can legally and morally do this for people at scale. But it is coming.
Digital twins, I'm not sure if you're very familiar with that, but that was what the whole media was following up on, I would say roughly 7 years ago. They thought that the next step would be, with the help of technology, the medical space would be able to easily build a digital twin, which for those watching maybe not familiar with this, that would just be a copy of the human body, right? It might be the entire human body, or it might just be certain organs, but just creating an exact simulated copy of the human body. And then that way your simulation can go to the hospital on your behalf, right? Can go to a lab and get tested and treated on your behalf to see what works on your simulation, and all that treatment and medication and recommendation will be sent back to you, who is seated at home in the comfort of your house. The medication will be given to you, and they will also work for you just as they will work on your simulation. Now, that simulation was supposed to be an exact copy, meaning down to the configuration of the DNA. At the molecular level, it should be identical in every regard. That has been the challenge, right? We didn't have the technology that could really duplicate a human body.
And we still don't.
In every regard, right? So now we are beginning to see these sophisticated cutting-edge technologies with quantum computing now, coming back strong, augmented with artificial intelligence. I'm curious to get your take on what we can look forward to see in the next phase to come.
Absolutely. So this is why biotech is so fascinating to me. So we as humans are the most advanced technology that exists. So a lot of people think binary, digits, codes. When you think technology, you don't really think biotechnology. We are the most incredibly complex. You sitting in that chair right now, you don't really think about it, but you are a configuration of 33 trillion cells. That's incredible. Trillion with a T. So those numbers are really hard to fathom. It's really hard to comprehend. All of those cells are working within each cell. You're talking about thousands of chemical reactions that are happening with molecular machinery, nanotechnology, intracell, working around the clock. That's incredible to think about. That is happening every second. Thousands of chemical reactions happening times 33 trillion. You have senescence, you have cell death. You are on a daily basis replacing about, I believe the figure is about 33 billion with a B cells every day. That's incredible. So the sophistication that we are talking about. So when you're talking about our relatively rudimentary tech, which is up until this point, which we'll get into quantum technology here in a second, we're talking about binary digits trying to replicate the complexity of a single human body. We just can't get there. The efficiency that the human body works on is astronomical as well. The amount of energy that is required to run the 33 trillion cells to actually, and then all of the molecular machinery within each individual cell, that's incredible. You would think if we were going to replicate a single version of ourselves virtually, and it would be an exact replica, to actually do that, we would need, I have no idea what the computation would be, but essentially 2 to 3 gigafactories, right? Just to have the processing power. So imagine having that much power to actually replicate a single biological human, and the complexity, everything that's happening from a chemical perspective, and narrowing that down to a few watts of energy. That's how efficient the human body is. It works on a few watts of energy. It doesn't need gigafactories to run a single body. That is incredible. We just do not have the technology to do what you're saying. Now, I love the concept of it, but to get there, we're a long ways off because we just don't have the technological capability to get there and cross that barrier. Now, a lot of people are very bullish on quantum technology. Obviously, it's still in its infancy of development, but it does have huge potential ramifications because I believe the more that I study, the more that I dive into the human body and the complexity and the microtubules that are within each neuron, how they actually act, I believe that a lot of it is based on quantum systems. Now, we're still learning about it, and we're still in the dark about how everything actually works together, but we're learning every single day, and AI is only advancing and accelerating how quickly we're actually learning more about ourselves. So the irony of this, I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but I also don't want to glaze over this. We'll get to quantum computing in one moment if it's okay with you, but it's kind of ironic when I hear people say that they're afraid of AI becoming self-aware and AI understanding itself. We're still trying to do that for ourselves. So I believe AGI is already present. I believe that we have already achieved it. Now, there's multiple.
Now you're opening up a lot of can of worms, Steven, which we could spend an entire hour on.
So I won't go down the rabbit hole. I believe AGI is already here, but obviously, how do you define AGI, right? So that's where some people, depending on your definition of what AGI means, could say, no, we haven't arrived yet, and we're a long ways off.
A computer being able to do everything a human can do. That would be achieving AGI. But I don't think even the owner of OpenAI thinks we're there yet.
Oh, yes, he does. Sam is very aware of where we are. Now, what he's willing to tell the public is, and obviously, we are OpenAI has developed multiple iterations that are not commercially available yet. They roll it out slowly, relatively slowly. Right, but they've already developed multiple capabilities and versions of this that we aren't even able to see. So Sam is very aware of what he is holding on to. There's lots of people who have quit OpenAI because they have seen what it's capable of, right? And it's a little scary to them. I personally am not afraid of advancing AI to super intelligence. I see it as advantageous. I see it as it's going to accelerate us into a prosperous future, and we're going to obtain, I believe, symbiosis with AI, robotics, and this technology. Obviously, that's my optimistic view, and it's always fun to have a pessimistic versus optimistic debate, because I understand both viewpoints. But yes, I believe we are already there. We already have AI that is operating at the PhD level. That is, they pass IQ tests, right? Multiple iterations have passed IQ tests that put them in the 120 to 140s. So, which is significantly higher than the average human when they test. So, I believe that we already have achieved AGI, at least from my definition, because there's nothing that a human can do that we are not able to do with these AI models.
You were on a very, very interesting journey there when you were explaining what we could look forward to in the near future with regard to longevity and immortality. I was curious to see, chucking back quantum computing into the picture. Are we saying maybe within the next decade, right? You gave a nice explanation of how binary versus probably we're going to go to qubits that quantum uses or something to explain why we should be seeing an exponential increase in this advancement.
Of course. So Willow is an interesting, I'm not sure if you've looked into this at all, but definitely challenge your listeners to take a look at Google Willow. It's incredible what they are doing with their quantum chips. The interesting thing that I am looking at is which chip configuration is actually going to win out, because there's multiple different types of quantum computing. There's superconducting, that is the easiest to scale and control. However, there's a lot of problems with it, because obviously with superconducting qubits, you have to keep them extremely cold, colder than outer space. You have to get them to temperatures of close to absolute zero. So from an efficiency perspective, you're talking about an exorbitant amount of energy required just for the cooling technology. And then, so that's why you see these massive honeycomb looking computers, right? That's not the computer. Those are the systems to keep the computer alive. The computer is actually about yay big, the actual chip that's doing the calculations, running the calculations, but it requires, which is the same with modern day computers. Back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, those computers had very little processing power, but they took up rooms, right? If you go back and look at the first few iterations of computers, it's incredible the scale, the scope of what it took to do very basic computations, right? And now we have, China just released a chip that is incredibly efficient that is smaller than a grain of salt. So our efficiency has dramatically improved. The same thing will happen to quantum computers. Because we're in our infancy, you're seeing these giant machines that are running what I would consider to be very rudimentary calculations from a qubit or a quantum perspective, right? Those are going to become very, very, very much more efficient, much more, you'll have desktops, right? You'll have small handhelds, you'll have quantum computers that are significantly more efficient, able to do more calculations. We only need these large machines because we're just starting to figure out how to make it work. Photonic is another one. So photonic, I believe to be potentially the future, potentially the winner. The problem with photonic quantum chips or qubits has been scalability, because it begins to break down as you scale the system. So that's been the biggest issue. So using light to actually generate the calculations. So coherence has not necessarily been an issue, but scale has. So that's one thing they just recently had a development where they were able to scale it theoretically and definitely. And I'm watching that development to see if obviously it continues, right? Is there going to be a continuation? Is that a one-off? And I haven't actually looked at the study. I just saw the headline and I have it sitting there for my weekend perusement.
Yeah.
So I'll let you know, but that's the one thing that I'm going to point out. We are in our infancy for quantum computing. Now, quantum will allow us to achieve exponentially efficient and larger data sets, be able to do much more than we're currently able to do with AI that's just focusing on ones and zeros, binary code. So if we wanted to emulate or model a human that works on more than just ones and zeros, right? The human body is very complex. You're talking about ACTG just as the basic base pair code for DNA, right? And then obviously you have thousands and thousands of proteins. So we can model proteins and everything from AI, but when you start looking at creating a digital copy of you, where if you wanted to virtually inject yourself with a specific chemical, a specific compound, what is the effect of the body? To emulate that, to model that, we have to have some sort of quantum computational capability. And I believe we are going to get there. You asked within the next decade. I absolutely think that is achievable, but we've got a lot of hurdles to get through to get to a scalable quantum chip that doesn't have as many errors as we're seeing right now.
You know, Ray Kurzweil, also a futurist, computer scientist, he's made a lot of predictions in the past, some of which have come true. He's known globally for saying that we will be achieving immortality by the year 2030. So that's roughly 5 years away from now. I don't know if you've heard him saying that, but it's all over the news, it's all over YouTube, it's all over the place that we have 5 more years to achieve this immortality.
You want my personal prediction, Newton? I believe biological immortality is something that, because of regulatory restrictions, and will we have the technological capability to do it? Theoretically, I believe we could get there by 2030. Yes, we're not that far away. We're seeing incredible leaps and bounds, not annually, we're talking daily with what we're achieving right now. And AI and quantum computing is just going to accelerate that. So my biggest issue with that statement of, I love Ray, by the way, if he ever sees this interview, and I love his optimism and just want to give him a hug and a high five for it, just not simultaneously. I think 2030 is a little aggressive, solely based on the fact that it's going to have to cross many hurdles from a regulatory restriction standpoint, human trials, to actually get it to commercial viability. So my personal projection is we will achieve it, and it will be a commercially available to us as humans by 2040.
one thing I find very interesting is the way Ray predicted that we will be achieving this, right? He's going via the route of robots, microscopic robots, nanobots that would be crawling in our bloodstream, going around repairing the cells at a cellular level to fix us from the inside out.
Well, we already have that.
And no, that's his idea of how this immortality would come about with nanobots. And I can't help but draw parallels with the invention of penicillin, right? Somewhere at the beginning of the 20th century. This
penicillin was actually found by accident, but
yeah, exactly. Alexander Fleming found that by mistake, right? Now, the moment from that discovery until when penicillin was approved for public or commercial use, that was roughly a decade, as you're probably suggesting now that would happen from the moment we get nanobots performing this magic until it's ubiquitous all over the planet as a longevity pill. But it's something good to look forward to. And you're putting that number at 2040. Well, that's quite a far way off. I'm happy to have you back on this podcast if you rethink.
No, yes, absolutely. So if I end up moving the needle and move it up, so I believe we're going to have the capability to reset our biological clocks prior to that. But from a commercially viable, in other words, Newton, you have the ability to walk into a clinic or a hospital and receive the ability to go back in time biologically, right? I think that I put that currently at about 2040 before you actually have that capability or from an accessibility.
There is this dude, Bryan Johnson, he's called. I'm not sure if you know him or you're familiar with his work.
Blood transfusions, yes.
Well, yes, I think he's right there at the forefront, pushing the envelope when it comes to longevity and how long the human body can stay active and healthy. I'm curious to get your opinion about the work he's doing so far and the things he's publishing online and his claim that he celebrates his birthday once every 2 years right now.
Yeah. So one thing that I think is very achievable is us getting to the point where we achieve escape velocity, right? That's one thing. Bryan Johnson is definitely at the forefront just because he is pushing the envelope, pushing the boundaries. He's doing some amazing, incredible things. Some people, it's highly controversial, of course, and a lot of people are against what he's doing. A lot of medical professionals are against what he's doing, but then there's a huge amount of people who are proponents, and they're watching very closely because he's essentially his own guinea pig, which I applaud him for that because yes, he didn't just do this on a whim. He was very researched. He actually talked with a bunch of people prior to doing this, very much prepared, right? And he was willing to accept adverse repercussions if it went wrong. So it's very unique to have somebody who's willing to make themselves a guinea pig. A lot of people are willing to make somebody else a guinea pig, but to go through it yourselves with
have the resources to make that happen.
Have the resources, correct. Have the resources, yes, but also the testicular fortitude to get it done on yourself, right? Not knowing, there's no pre-existing data that would support that this is going to work. Right. So my hat is off to him. I do not agree with all of his statements and findings. However, it's incredible how he consistently tracks all of his levels. Now, time will tell, could he be extending his life cycle? Or again, back to what we said earlier, is he simply increasing his health span, right? So in other words, his biological clock is still there. He's not going to live to 200, 250, but will he remain healthy? When he's an 80-year-old, will he have the physical body and energy levels of someone who is 30, someone who's 40? So that's going to be interesting to watch. I think that is a little bit more likely.
Yeah, the published claim right now, though, is that he has reversed his aging by between 5 to 7 years. So he's 5 to 7 years younger than his biological age. And to think that he started this whole process not too long ago, he's very optimistic that, he's going to add more years to his life, significantly more years than he's done so far. And again, that thing of celebrating his birthday once every 2 years, it's been published all over the place as a great achievement. I also found something very interesting, Steven, that there's a whole movement that has started on the back of this. There's a whole community. Bryan himself, he refers to himself as a rejuvenation athlete. This was to fight back a lot of the negative feedback he got from quite a lot of people calling him vampires or so on and so forth, many other things. But there's a whole movement now, and there's this website, Rejuvenation Olympics, where people go to compete for who can actually, turn back the hands of the clock the farthest. And he's right there at the top. I stumbled upon this movement via a post he made on LinkedIn a couple of days back. And there's actually a leaderboard. And of course, I was curious to know who was number 2. And there was somebody just right, below him in points, less than 2 or 3 points. And that person had been at level 1 before in the past. And the number 3 is this person. It's Daniel Lewis, but not the actor. Daniel has posted all his habits and rituals as well online, his nutrition, all posted on his Instagram. And there's one thing that stands out, and many people are making fun of the top guy, Bryan, over that Daniel was able to achieve this remarkable reduction in his age at just a very, very small fraction of the cost that Bryan had to invest to achieve the same thing, right? Someone has done this. So there's a whole movement, there's a whole competition, there's a whole Olympics happening on the back of that. And I think that's a good thing, because roughly you have at least, the last time I checked, there were roughly 5,000, 6,000 people in that group. You sign up, you get your blood checked, and after that they give you a score, right? And how your health looks longevity wise, and anyone can search you online and can see where you're positioned on that board. Very interesting movement. I don't know what you think about that.
It is very interesting. I think it's great, personally, because it shows what's possible. It shows what's achievable. Now, my perspective is, I would have to take a look at all the markers that they're actually analyzing. So when you do your blood work, what actually gives you that score? What pops it out? And the reason I say that is, obviously there's a lot of things that we know are contributing factors to aging. So if you are eliminating those, or you are decreasing those markers that are signs of aging, then therefore you can assign a point value to it, saying that you are at the top of the leaderboard because you have achieved this biologically. Though I don't know how comprehensive that list is, and the reason I say that, and this is without actually looking at what they're analyzing and what goes into that score that they give you, right? And I'm sure it's pretty good. And I think it's a great starting point, Newton. I would just challenge that it's not comprehensive, meaning we're still learning and finding out how. So we are cellularly, from a DNA perspective, encoded from birth to age, to decay. It is something that is in our DNA, and I believe it is something that we can absolutely reverse. There's multiple methodologies, both theoretical and in practice, to achieving that. I love that what Bryan Johnson has done exists. The fact that there are thousands of people that are following, not only following, but emulating his work and actually kind of competing to see how they can roll their own biological clocks back. And to your point, so first, I love it. I think it's a great initial step. I don't necessarily think it's comprehensive, because we still don't know exactly how to reset our code to eliminate the aging process. That said, if we know what markers to look for what we can do to, okay, so if we do this experimentally, then that decreases XYZ marker in our bloodstream that we know is a contributing factor to the aging cellular death, right? Or senescence. So I love the approach. I think it's fantastic. I would like to see more of it. I would like to see it get a little bit more of a following. I would like to see hundreds of thousands or even millions of people all doing this, because why not? If you're able to live, I think everyone should be living the best version of themselves, trying to be as healthy as they possibly can. And to your point of the gentleman, Mr. Lewis, who was able to achieve what Bryan Johnson did at a fraction of the cost, that happens with every technology ever. The first iteration of every technology is expensive. Yes, DeepSeek is going to be so expensive. We're talking it took billions of dollars to sequence the first genome. Now we can sequence billions. We can sequence your DNA. You can walk into a clinic and we can sequence your comprehensive genome for a couple grand, right? So it's incredible. So that happens with every technology. So yes, he's leading the way, he's leading the charge, but it's very expensive to lead the way from an experimental path. So you don't have to spend millions of dollars to achieve what he is doing experimentally. That's why I love when you brought up the point of, okay, it's becoming a little bit more palatable. This guy did it at a fraction of the cost, and he's actually number 3, right? So he's seeing similar results for significantly less cost. I think that's going to continue to be suppressed. We're going to be able to achieve those results significantly more efficiently, faster, easier, more affordable.
Steven, I gathered that one of your strongest passions is helping to support the advancement of civilization via technological innovation where possible. Now, I couldn't help but draw parallels with someone else, this guy. So I'm currently at page 502 at the moment. And so for anyone listening to the audio and can see what I'm showing, so it's a book with Elon Musk, right? Steven, what do you think about the man? Because he's the exact same statement. He's all about advancing human civilization and trying to make the human species multiplanetary. So he says that all over the book, almost every 10 pages, you come across that. He uses that maybe as in a nice way, as a tacit excuse for a lot of the surges and the layoffs and many things that happen within the book. I would like to get your opinion about the man himself, just simple and brief, if you don't mind.
One of the biggest regrets that I have in life to this point is I have not been able to shake his hand and meet the man yet. He's made a lot of enemies, and I love that he's one of those people like Steve Jobs, like everyone great, who is going to do it because it needs to be done, regardless of how many people hate him along the way. So he has a lot of animosity, a lot of people who absolutely show the most disdain for the man. A lot of people will call.
Why?
You go online and you see correlations to Hitler. He takes a lot of abuse online, but the thing that I admire the most about him is not his dance moves. Keep them coming. It keeps us entertained. But oh my goodness, man, he's got better. He's much older than I am, but he can move significantly better. These hips don't move like that, so I will never have a dance off with you, Elon. However, a lot of admiration for what he's achieved, what he's doing, and where he's going. He's one of those. Unfortunately, Newton, one of the few things that we differ on, Elon and myself, is the exact topic we were just discussing. Is he feels that humans shouldn't live forever. However, my argument is people, again, should have the option. And if he
is that his position? I had no idea that was his stance. Because he's giving birth to so many children, I thought he would want everyone to live on forever.
And this is his take. I don't want to speak for him, at least now, because viewpoints change, perspectives change. So I don't know his current position on this topic. However, I was privy to a interview, a podcast that was done. This was actually years ago. I believe it could have been as many as 5 years ago, and I don't remember the exact interviewer. However, his take was that he was against the technology, the ability for pseudo-immortality or immortality or longevity. He felt at that time of the interview that he did that it was potentially detrimental to human civilization and society. I take the opposing view, and I would love or welcome a debate with him on the topic, because obviously there's multiple considerations that we didn't get into, from economical morality. There's a lot of things that we didn't necessarily touch on. However, I believe that the pros significantly outweigh the cons. I believe that technology will be developed. I believe that it can be developed. And I believe that we should understand our biological time clock, our restraints, and what inhibits us from extending our life cycle, and at the very least, just the understanding, the knowledge that comes with a comprehensive understanding of how our biological systems work. So that's the only thing that, to my knowledge, we differ on. And again, viewpoints change, and he might have a different position now, but everything that he has achieved and is looking to do is to better human civilization. A lot of people put horns on him and will say that he's doing the devil's work and all these things. It's simply not true. The man is, I wouldn't call him necessarily altruistic, because obviously I think he just enjoys the challenge. He looks as I do of what technologies are going to make the biggest impact for humanity. That is what I want to be a part of. He believes that we, like myself, should expand our footprint. Obviously, Mars is not a very hospitable environment. There's a lot of hurdles to get there, but he believes that we need to make that leap so strongly that he's going to do whatever it takes to get there. And I don't think anyone is going to be able to stand in his way.
Regarding my comment about Elon Musk himself, I would reserve that for a longer episode. Happy to have you back, or anyone else that's willing to discuss Elon Musk some other day, because I have so much to speak about, especially as my biggest passion lies with the tech careers for professionals, getting them to be successful in whatever they're working in. And that impacts a lot of employees, including the 80% laid off at Twitter and the large numbers laid off elsewhere. Now, do I think it was the right move? Not necessarily. There's something in the middle. I have a solution. Now is probably not the time. But what I was going to say was, reading this book, and this is just for anyone listening, this is the first biography I've read of somebody that seems to focus more on the author himself. Have you read this, Steven?
I have. So I haven't read the physical copy. I'm an Audible person,
okay.
So I've listened to the audiobook rather.
It speaks volumes about Walter Isaacson, right? About his understanding of what Elon is working on, about the type of person he is, his own subjective perspective about everything going on. It paints the entire book, and sometimes I'm struggling to see, to understand, to get a glimpse of what Elon is thinking himself. Someone else is painting the narrative for him, and I think that's a little bit unfair and unjust. In my opinion, biographies should be 100% objective. I mean, as objective as possible. And I'm not even sure how Elon Musk, if he at all approved this, how he would have signed off on something like this to be published, because it's impacting almost everything, Steven. If you go page by page and you try to analyze the possible ramification of such information getting out, it shows that you can't even rely on some of these products because they're kind of made in a hurry with the list resources possible, and many other things, which I just wonder how someone would allow something like this to be published. But that's a complete discussion for some other day. Even as we wind to an end, I just want to throw in quickly some nuggets for some tech professionals watching this, or people looking to build some thriving career. Doesn't necessarily have to be strictly in the tech space, but I know you have had this dance where you've been able to marry technology with some of your businesses, and you're very knowledgeable on the trajectory the tech space is heading at the moment. If you have some advice you would like to give to people looking to build a successful career that incorporates technology in their work, what would that career look like or sound like?
Sure. You have to, when you're hunting, you never want to shoot where the moving target is, you shoot where it's going. So you have to look at, if you're looking to build a successful career for yourself, whether it's entrepreneurial, right, where you want to build a business and then go that route, or you want to work for what's the next thing. Take a look at what the future looks like 5 years from now with agentic AI globally. 40%, at least this is a study that I saw recently, about 40 to 42% of global corporations said that they plan to reduce their workforce by implementing agentic AI into their processes. So that's going to be a massive industry. So one thing that I would say, you're talking about tens of thousands of opportunities of businesses, millions of businesses that are going to be needing to implement their own variations of AI into their business. I believe that if you were to teach yourself everything you need to know about what does it mean, what does agentic AI do, what are the potential applications, how do I get involved, I think that there's going to be a lot of job creations in that sector because it's going to be massive and it's going to be fast. There's going to be a lot of hiring. There's going to be a lot of need for people to actually go into businesses and help them optimize their businesses utilizing AI technology. I believe that is one potential piece of advice that I would give somebody if you haven't spent adequate time researching, taking a look, and there are lots of courses that you can find. Some are snake oil, some are actually good, but if you can take some courses on AI implementation, various applications for AI, and what industries are going to be most positively affected from a fiscal standpoint, I think that would behoove you, and I think that would be a great skill to have. That's going to be something that there's going to be a lot of need for in the next 5 years.
Final question, Steven. We have a ritual on the podcast where the guest shares the biggest mistake they've made in their entire career. It could be the biggest, it could be the most significant mistake, it could be something that really stands out and you would like to warn anyone coming in your footsteps or following in your footsteps not to go down that particular route because you had to learn the hard way. If you have one such important lesson, especially a mistake, especially something you would do differently, Steven, what would that be?
I've had many. Trusting the wrong partners, bad investments. There's a lot of mistakes that I've made throughout my career. The beautiful thing is, whenever inevitably bad things happen, you hit a challenge, you hit a roadblock, a business deal falls through, an investment goes sour. When something happens, a lot of people give up. Resilience is necessary. So the one piece of advice I would have to your listeners, your audience, anyone who wants to go down this road is understand that technology is rapidly advancing and changing the landscape that we're currently existing in, and it will continue to do so. So if you find that I have an amazing career, right? I'm making 6 figures, 7 figures a year, whatever the case may be, whatever you're satisfied with, don't get comfortable. And you should always spend a little bit of time looking ahead. What could potentially, especially with the advancement of AI and agentic AI, could my career be at risk for obsolescence in the near future. Because if you get comfortable in this day and age, you could be without a job because someone like me comes to your boss, your company, and says, hey, I can replace 20-30% of your workforce and increase your bottom line by X by implementing this tool. Most companies are going to implement that tool. So if that happens to you, don't let it. You really have to look at the future, really start looking at what the applications and possibilities are for agentic AI entering the workforce and robotics, and really look from a risk perspective. Am I at risk of obsolescence? Is my job at risk? And focus on, okay, how can I pivot to be more valuable or change my career altogether?
Steven, thanks a lot. For anyone watching this, looking to find you online, where should they be looking?
Sure. The easiest, like I said, I don't spend a lot of time on the consulting company personally, but if you have a pitch deck, if you want to talk about agentic AI, if you want to talk about a future, or if you want to reach out to me, the best way is going to be through LinkedIn. You can find me, Steven. You just type in Steven Zeller. There's not that many of us out there, and I should pop up there at the top of the search.
It was a pleasure having you, Steven, on the podcast.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the stimulating conversation.
On that note, we bring this episode to an end. Thank you everyone for watching, and also thank you for the likes. For the previous video I published, we got quite a lot of likes and views as well, but for some reason no comments. I don't know why you guys are not commenting. You need to comment and give some feedback so I know what to improve upon and what to take out of the show and what to do more or less of. Nonetheless, I appreciate the support. Continue the support so that I can continue reporting. Until the next episode, cheers.